Stories from Foster Care is brought to you by the Irish Foster Care Association in association with the Department of Children, Disability and Equality.
Welcome to Stories from Foster Care. I'm Niamh Barrett, and in this episode I'm talking to Elizabeth Ward and Bridget Power, two traveller women who work as family access workers at Exchange House Ireland, the national traveller service based in Dublin.
Soft support's as simple as a book and as simple as a story, watching a film, a song, just letting that child know that all of them is celebrated. That emotional piece, I think, is really, really important because travellers come from art and they respond better through arts and physical stuff than all the other rules.
The settled foster parents say wouldn't have had the experience of raising traveller children, so they wouldn't really know where to begin. They were losing a sense of themselves, so they were losing part of their culture and who they were.
In this conversation, we speak about the needs of traveller children in care and the widespread ignorance about traveller culture in Ireland, which has a direct impact on these children. So thanks for coming in, Elizabeth and Bridget. Really nice to meet you. Thanks for coming in to talk to us. And just to ask you first up, how would you like to introduce yourselves?
My name is Elizabeth Ward. I grew up around Coolock area and I work in Exchange House Ireland as a family access worker. Myself and Bridget are the same. We do a lot of advocacy for women within the community and a lot of support there and voluntary work on the outside. So that'd be just...
Yeah, thank you. And Bridget?
Morning, Niamh. My name is Bridget. I'm also a family access support worker in Exchange House Ireland. I wouldn't have been there now as long as Elizabeth, but Exchange House Ireland offers a different range of services within the travelling community. Now they're run by both settled and travelling community. So we offer, there's a mental health group, a youth services group. There would be us, which is in part of the family crisis team, and there's a range of different services. So they're on the front line as well.
So what drew you into this line of work? What was it? Did someone pave the way for you, or an experience you had, or what brought you into it?
I guess for myself, it was growing up. I grew up in a camp in Coolock there, and we would have had a lot of children coming to stay with us. My mother and father wouldn't have been foster parents initially, but we had free rein for children that were running away from home. Children, maybe their parents are going through a hard time. She would have a couple of caravans there for the boys for one and the girls for another. And it was a place where they could come for food, emotional support. And when their parents were back on their feet, they would go home. And that wasn't just traveller children. The majority of them would have been settled children. In the 80s and 90s, when there was a lot of drugs crises and alcohol issues, my mother and father were huge support to the children in the community.
So that instilled that sense of service in you and helping people out. Yeah,
so I've always been intrigued with working with children in care because they are our most vulnerable group within the community. And so I've always wanted more insight into what goes on because, as you know, you're aware of the 1963 itinerant report and how the government wanted to kind of fix the itinerant problem, and a lot of children were taken into care. So travellers have a real fear of their children being taken. And I also had that fear, but I've been breaking it down day by day, working in Exchange House alongside TUSLA with our most vulnerable group of children. And I like to work with children. Teenagers are harder, aren't they, Bridget? I do like to work with children and support the mums and dads because they are going through a lot of difficulties. And if we could be of any support when we feel that we can support them, it's a job well done. Even if we don't get what we wanted to achieve, well, sure, we've helped somebody. And the reason I'm probably in this job is one of my colleagues that I work with now kind of pushed me to go for this position a few years ago, and I'm glad that I did, because I have a lot more insight into what goes on, and I think a lot more travellers need a lot of more seats at tables where our community has been discussed. Bridget?
I grew up in Navan, so I wouldn't have had the experience that Elizabeth probably had, but I would have had family members that were foster parents, extended family members. So I also seen like they had taken in children from the travelling community, because before that, say a couple of years back, you would have traveller children going into the foster system, but then being placed within the settled community. So they were just losing. I felt like, I'm going to say my own opinion because not everybody's going to feel the same. So I just felt like that there were times when the traveller children would be reintroduced back into their community. They would find it difficult then to settle into the community because they've been taken out for so long, and the settled foster parents, say, wouldn't have had the experience of raising traveller children, so they wouldn't really know where to begin. You know, so they not only were they facing inequalities within school, with the healthcare system, but then they were also facing it back within their own community, because they weren't truly being accepted back. I don't think they were losing a sense of themselves, so they were losing part of their culture and who they were, because they were being placed with these families that hadn't got a clue about travellers.
Yeah. And I've heard it said that sometimes not only did people not have a clue, but they were actually trying to move them away from their traveller culture, actively move them away.
The children then were being told like that how you're living is not the right way. This is how you should live. This is how you should behave. This is how you should act. So they were facing inequalities all round, if you know what I mean. Like they were.
Yeah.
They were kind of getting confused, I think. So I've seen it happen in certain cases where when they would be reintroduced back, or they wanted to go back to their own community at a certain stage, they were finding it difficult themselves then to be accepted within their community, because they'd lost their own sense of culture and their own sense of self. You know, so they were neither truly accepted in one culture or the other, because in the settled community they were still seen as being a traveller, but within the travelling community they were seen as being a bit different, because they hadn't got the traditions that, you know, the traveller culture would have been taught.
Yeah, and I don't even think it's the foster carers' problem. I think there needs to be proper cultural awareness training for foster families and a lot more support for them as well. But we do have some foster families in the traveller community, but it's very hard for travellers to come forward to be foster families, because our community is a kind of a huge family. And so if you decide, I want to foster Bridget's children, well then Bridget would just like probably contact my mother or my sister and say, give me back my children. So it's really difficult in that way. So there needs to be a lot more support for people that want to foster, but also for the settled people that are fostering the children. They're doing their best. They haven't been trained. They have no cultural awareness training. We've had people reach out to us for advice, and we're happy to give that at Exchange House Ireland. And I find it very difficult for them, because they're there and the children in some cases feel loved and cared and respected for. But then we have the elephant in the room, is that they're a traveller, and the foster family don't want to maybe say, we accept you as a traveller, because then the traveller child might say, well, why wouldn't you accept me? I'm a great kid. But we've come up with a way to read stories, and through those stories then the foster families can say that we care about all of you, not just your physical needs or emotional needs for education or that we care about your culture too. And so that's why I read this book, The Fairy Queen, to our Access children. Sometimes all of our Accesses, I've took out this book at one stage or another. And it's out an audio version as well for people that are illiterate. We have a lot of moms in the community that can't read, so this can be played to the children, and when they're in Access they can hear it and feel very safe. But for the foster families, it's a good asset to have for a bedtime story. So then the child then is thinking in their mind, well, she said it without saying it, like, I'm accepted, all of me, and I can embrace who I am without having to hide it and oppress it, because oppressions within the community, and those children specifically feel very hard done by when they come out of care when they're 18. They always come back and look for their culture and and that was kind of, when it's hidden and put away, it's really hard to come back to. And I just think if whoever's in charge, we need some more cultural awareness training. We need soft supports like that, as simple as a book and as simple as a story, watching a film, I don't know how, a song, just letting that child know that all of them is celebrated, not just the parts that they're good, they're sitting like so, they're sleeping at 7, they're doing all these things that they're told to do, but just like that emotional piece, I think is really, really important, because travellers come from art and they respond better through arts and physical stuff than all the other rules.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and there's a power in stories that, like you say, it's getting a message across, but not like sitting a child down and very seriously telling them something. And like you said, they'd be asking, why wouldn't I be accepted?
Yeah.
But a story is another way in.
Yeah.
So it sounds like the cultural awareness training is a really, really important piece of what needs to happen. And what's happening already, or is there much happening already? Do you know?
I think there are some areas that's trying to introduce cultural awareness in regards to travellers. And plus there's a lot more now. At the minute there would be a lot more foster families that would be from the travelling community themselves. So I think that's great, like if you could get a lot more families to take part in being foster parents, which is really hard as well, because as Elizabeth was saying earlier, there is a distrust with travellers and the system because of the fear of their own kids being taken off them, or there's always been that kind of distrust there.
Mm-hmm.
But if that relationship could be built on, maybe more travellers would come forward and be acceptable to taking in other traveller kids, other traveller families. And I'm not saying that doesn't mean that settled people shouldn't take in traveller families just because they're from the travelling community. I'm just saying that if they had that cultural awareness, which they might not even realise that what they're, because they're not introducing the culture to the kids, how it's going to affect them in the future. They're just doing their best. The place is so overrun with families needing to be taken in, like kids in the care. So I'm not saying that it's their fault, or it's just if you don't know, you don't know how to move forward, do you?
Yes, yeah. If you don't have the information, and we don't have a huge amount of time today in terms of how much would need to be, like how much information people might need, but even now, in terms of cultural awareness, what would be the main areas that settled foster carers would need to know about, just to even like mention those now for anyone who's listening? What are the most important things that people need to know? What's
come up for me in our access is a lot of young little girls go maybe in care and all their hair being cut off. A lot of traveller little girls have really long hair. It's culturally they would have long hair, and just that being cut, and the child coming to access with a bob style haircut, and mom just going into a frenzy because she wasn't even asked, and the foster parents would have thought this was beautiful and she was so cute now in her new haircut going to school, and just like that would have been huge. Another one would be what I've seen was little boys in the community are all about animals, horses, dogs, cats, any kind of animals. They love animals. So then these children might be fostered into an apartment, say, and they're struggling really bad. And so travellers, you tend to use, little boys especially, use their outdoor voice. They're mainly outdoor. We're outdoorsy kind of people. So we're mainly, they do better in nature and hanging out and playing football outside and doing boisterous stuff. So if you put two little boys, say, in an apartment and they're climbing the walls, they just can't cope. It's not an environment that they're used to. And they feel really, really restricted. I've seen it myself where these couple of children that were in one family, and the foster parents were amazing, beautiful couple, lovely. And they had these two children, but they just couldn't cope because they were lovely boys, but they were used to being outside. They were used to playing with so many other children. And this was a couple that didn't have children and were very, very quiet and had everything to perfection at their home. So it was difficult for them to manage these two boisterous children. So I remember them coming back a few weeks later. They were coming to Access, and I seen differences in them for the better. And actually these two children then were fostered within the community, and they got to go and pick up their dog, and they were playing with a horse, and they were doing like out on their bikes and playing ball, and they had lots of friends, and they were just at peace. And it just, then they came and they had that time with their mother, and it was a lovely time. They had lots of stories, and Mom was really, really happy that they were really happy. So just like matching children up is great. And I've seen other settled families reach out to Exchange House Ireland for just little things, and just even playing traveller games like playing the spoons. Children, I had one dad that loved to play the spoons when he came to Access, so it was like an ancient kind of music. I don't know if you're aware.
Yeah.
So he would play that. The gal that was involved in the case probably didn't like, it was too much culture, she felt. I won't go into it, but that kind of...
So the gal is the guardian ad litem, who took a dim view of the playing of the spoons for whatever reason, and then what happened, or can you say?
Well, that was the baby that was in care. Dad was taking care of, wasn't taking care of the baby. The foster parents were from birth. Mom was in addiction and couldn't take care of baby, so Dad wasn't able to do it on his own, but he wanted to see the baby every week. Now, we supported this dad to no ends. He was a great father, in my opinion, for the amount of time that he had. He was very aware of the child's future and was saving for it. We made a time capsule in Access for him to have for the future. All he wanted was one day a week with his child. And for whatever reason, this gal had a special interest in this case, and she came to a lot of accesses, and we got some psychologists in to assess Access, to give their opinion, and they were in the same mindset as ourselves at Exchange House Ireland. We were there as a support people. And I think through that case, I learned so much. I've never learned as much as I've learned through that case. It's given me so much knowledge, and being able to go to my colleagues, our play therapist, to being able to go to our social worker, our manager, to be able to go to anyone in the office and be able to vent out, and then to be assisted in that work. We have a wraparound service in there, and it's a wraparound for our customers and for ourselves as well. So yeah, I won't go into that anymore. This gal thought she was doing the right thing, but we showed her, like, not that she listened, but we showed her that it wasn't the right thing. And eventually in maybe 10-15 years, this child is going to come back and probably look for the culture that they missed out on. And I think what she was missing was being able to reflect.
Yeah, so that's a piece of education, and as you say, reflective space that needs to happen around that education. And for yourself, Bridget, you're an access worker too. How has that experience been for you, being in that role, and what do you take from it with regards to children in the care system?
I just find that the children kind of feel more comfortable with us. You know, they understand that we're from the community as well, and we understand them basically. So I think, as Elizabeth said, they're free to be themselves. They're free to speak their own language if they feel like they need to.
Mm-hmm.
But also they still have that safety that we're there to protect them and we're there for their needs, and you know, so it gives kind of best of both worlds.
Hi there, I'm Katie Wrench. You're listening to Stories from Foster Care. Please subscribe wherever you get your podcasts.
Tell us about the language for those of us who don't know about it. It's cant, right?
Yeah, some people would call it gammon, cant.
Yeah.
And although all travellers are not fluent in it, all of us day to day
would use some sort of cant. Yeah.
Like sometimes me and Bridget would be having a conversation with each other, and naturally you'd go in and out of words, and sometimes we don't realise that we're in the office with other people that might not understand it, and we have to reflect on that ourselves. But like, I think some of the mums and dads would go in and out of that naturally because their guard is down. Like even anyone that's bilingual, they, like even a Spanish person, say for instance, would, if she's chatting to somebody that's a friend or somebody from that community, they go in and out of the language, and that's fine, and that's how you know they're kind of comfortable and relaxed. And so I don't see an issue. I think it's great that they use their language, but sometimes that language could be used as a weapon, and we're also there to be able to report that back.
So when you say used as a weapon, like it could be divisive to...
Well, if it was in a situation where we wouldn't be there, so you wouldn't have the traveller access support worker there, you would have a settled support worker there. So if the kids was talking to mum, or mum was speaking to the kids,
mm-hmm.
and trying to get a message to them that she doesn't want the worker to know about, that wouldn't happen with us, because we'd understand what was being said, and they'd know we'd understand what was being said.
Sure, yeah.
You know, so it's kind of a safety net then for the kids as well.
Mm-hmm.
Because we're able to pick up on if something is not right, or...
Yeah, sure, yeah. Like there's a bigger background to all of this, I suppose. Like at the back of all of this is Irish society broadly, and how we view travellers and traveller culture, and, you know, the discrimination and the racism that's out there. And ignorance, I think, is what we're talking about as well, of traveller culture. How does that play into your work, or how do you see that coming up in your work, if you do?
A lot.
It disconnects families, because a couple of years back the government came up with this thing where they wanted to integrate travellers into the settled community. Travellers put a lot of emphasis into families, family members, extended family. It means a lot to them. You know, it's the backbone of who they are. So myself, so I would have myself and maybe first cousins, second cousins, third cousins, they all would have grown up together, you know, and been like brothers and sisters. But they felt the need then to kind of, maybe if we separate that, and maybe they'd integrate more. So they started putting them into settled houses, which a lot of the travellers then didn't find very comfortable.
No, because settled people were afraid of, I don't know what, they were afraid, obviously, what goes on in media. They're afraid that these are monstrous people, really, I feel. And then with travellers, they've come from families and extended families, so they'd have visitors, and neighbours wouldn't really enjoy that. And they would have their animals, and neighbours wouldn't enjoy that either. So, like, it was difficult to integrate, and it's continuously difficult, and it's causing a lot of mental health issues within the community.
It caused more discrimination. It caused more trouble than what was actually helping.
Yeah.
It reversed. It didn't actually do what they wanted it to do. It reversed the situation. So it caused more discrimination within the schools, within the health system, within the areas that they were living in.
Yeah.
You know, so that then you had the isolation because the traveller kids were going out to play and they were being told by neighbours and that we don't want you mixing with that family, they're travellers and they're this and they're that. So they hadn't been learning exactly what travellers were or what their beliefs were or what their culture was. They were just going based off what they'd heard from the media, which the majority of times, again, is negative. You know, so.
And that leads into like children and education, and it's really, really hard then for children to stay in school because they're being discriminated not only by their peers but sometimes the teachers, and it's really, really difficult to be in a place where you are not accepted for who you are. And in an Ireland now that's supposedly for inclusivity, they're very slow to the mark to include us. And that's really, really upsetting because there's a lot of funding sometimes goes in for inclusivity, but I wish they would pump some of that into traveller education and making those children feel included, because that was probably the worst time in my life being a child, because when I would go to school I wouldn't be hit or pushed or any of that, but children would say, I would like to play with you but I can't because you're a traveller. You don't seem like a traveller, you don't look like a traveller, you don't sound like a traveller. Can you pretend not to be a traveller? And I would say no, because I come from a strong line of human rights activists, so that I knew that my mother wouldn't be very happy with me pretending to be other than I am. And I always felt, my mother always instilled in me to feel proud of myself and to look at myself. And I then went to school and I used to feel sad for the children, that they were being horrible to me, because it's like, what have they been taught? And I was sorry for them that they weren't travellers, because they would tell me all the rules they had to abide by, and they never had any pets, or they never was at a campfire, or they never heard like stories at a campfire. They never had loads of cousins. So I felt sorry for them, but they were feeling sorry for me. And it was because it wasn't their discrimination, it was handed down by their parents. And so now they probably have that discrimination handing it down to their children. So it is very, very, very sad. And I did come home to my mother one day and I was just really defeated and wanted to finish school. Stop. And I was only about 9. And that was it. I didn't want to go. I was crying. I was very upset. My father was saying, just leave her off. Leave her. It's not worth putting a child through that trauma. For what? It's not as if she's going to get a job, because really hard for travellers to get jobs. If you even get an interview, you're probably, I don't know what the percentage is, do you know, Bridget? But
very low.
It's very low for travellers to be hired. So it doesn't matter how educated you are. So I'm here pushing education right now on children that I know feel exactly how I felt, and it's really, really difficult. And still we have children that have gone through 3rd level and can't get a job. So like, why am I pushing it? Because it's really, really difficult in any case. So my mother wrote a poem about it, and I do share it to the children to give them insight into that. I know how they feel. And it is hard, and you shouldn't have to go through this, but you do. And that's just the way it is now. And the more people that do go through the 3rd level education and keep pushing to get more seats at tables, then it will become better in the future. Probably not in my lifetime, but I'm hoping for my children.
In a lot of them cases where they would go on to 2nd or 3rd level, a lot of them kids seem to feel the need to actually hide who they are.
Yeah,
to hide their identity. So it's not seen as a traveller going on to 2nd or 3rd level. It's seen as just another general population, member of the population going on to these levels, because they're actually hiding who they are. They feel that need to hide who they are in order to be accepted.
To get through. So they become 2 people. And that's really bad on your mental health. That is not good.
Yeah.
You know, when you have to oppress a part of yourself. Nobody should have to oppress any part of themselves. And I thought that was what New Age Ireland is, but obviously not for us yet.
Yeah, it's pretty shocking that you experienced that when you were 9, Elizabeth, and people are still experiencing that.
Yeah.
When it comes to children in care and foster parents in the travelling community as well, like we've talked about cultural awareness being very important, which kind of sits on really looking at the discrimination that's there that prevents the cultural awareness. But around children in care and in the fostering system, like, is there anything else you feel needs to change, like kind of short term? Is there anything that in the course of your work you feel like, oh gosh, I wish this was different, other than the attitudes and the ignorance?
For the children themselves?
Yeah.
I think with Tusla in particular, I think they could support the foster parents and the children more, in that kind of little bit of the bond there between the foster family and the child. But not only that, to have maybe psychiatric support for children, and we do have child counsellors at Exchange House Ireland, play therapists, but she's amazing. So Sinead, shout out to you. But also I think Tusla need to come up with a better way of communicating with the families, and just not maybe. I do feel their pain. I do feel mum and dad's pain. And when mum and dad is pain, when they can't get through to a service, or they don't get the answers, and that it's not explained to them in a very gentle way, then they're coming to access all wound up. And then the child is feeling that anxiety in the room. And it's really hard to kind of break down that anxiety. When mom just came from a meeting yesterday, and she's so antsy in access, or dad. I just feel a lot of supports need to be done for the families, and there is some supports, and sometimes moms and dads do disengage, so Tusla do have a lot on their hands, and they are to capacity. A lot is expected of them workers, and is really unfair. And that's why us in Exchange House Ireland, we're very lucky. We get to work at a pace that's right for mom and dad. And so we're very supportive and nurturing. And so when we go and work with high speed Tusla, and they're doing a million things at once, our heads are spinning, never mind the mums, dads and the children. So I think just slow it down for the children rather than everything being so fast paced and official. What do you think, Bridget?
I think maybe the link and the communication between the different areas could be better connected. Mm-hmm. Like, I think if there was maybe not kind of a focus group, but if they communicated better with, like, so say you have Tusla, and then you have the doctors, and then you have access workers and whatever the case may be. So you're waiting on one report to reach this desk, and then they're doing their own report and it's reaching this desk. So by the time it gets from A to B, a lot has happened in between. So I think maybe the link and the communication, if there was some kind of way that they could all maybe work together, so that everybody has exactly what information is going on in which case, so they're not waiting on a certain thing to happen for me to give you information, or you to give the next person it. Yeah. So we all know, like, what's going on within a certain case or a certain area. I think maybe that might be something.
And
that
for
might
our
need to look
community,
into.
I do see, like, Tusla gets quite a bit of funding for a traveller community. I don't see a lot of that used to our advantage. I would like to see a lot more Tusla people, like, even funding our roles. We're dormant accounts, so, like, funding traveller access workers within Tusla. Even Tusla coming to work alongside our frontline staff to get more experience. I think the funding spent there would be more of benefit. Having cultural awareness, especially to child psychologists and psychiatrists and all of the mental health areas, I would like to see funding going through for arts for those children, because art is very therapeutic and it is a huge part of our culture. Although I don't have any artistic flair, but sure, I've been around it and consume. Like, I enjoy it. So I do think the funding could be used to better advantage to our community, and to have more of our community in Tusla, and when they do get to Tusla, because I've known travellers that did get to Tusla, to be celebrated and used as an asset, not to be utilised in the correct way, not discriminated against whilst they're in there or in hospitals or anywhere that they work. I'm not just targeting Tusla, I'm targeting the guards, I'm targeting hospitals, I'm targeting schools. I know teachers that went in to become teachers and they couldn't cope with the discrimination within the canteen. So like if funding was rolled out in that way, I don't know how per se, but I'm just saying push it towards getting some more social work from our community and more access workers, at the very least, and just looking at it through the lens of the child rather than what they think is best.
Yeah, that's what it comes back to always, isn't it?
Yeah.
Back to the child. And Exchange House sounds like a really brilliant model that works really well. Maybe more exchange houses are needed around the country as well. Yeah.
I think so. Not only for travellers, I would say for, like we have Darndale out here, we have Coolock. They need an exchange house of their own. So those families from disadvantaged areas have that support as well. I think that's where the services need to start thinking outside the box, because what's being done now is not really working very well. So it needs shake it up.
Yeah,
I also think that a lot of the cases get kind of lost within the system. You know, they are really overworked. Social workers in Ireland in general are really overworked. But I think a lot of the cases from point A of where the kids are being taken away from the families for a certain reason, and this, I'm not saying this is just I know we're focusing on travellers today, but I'm saying families in general, where there could be an opportunity maybe for that family to reconnect with their kids and go into rehabilitation and go through the programmes that they might need, and then allow them to get their kids back and start fresh and start anew, where if it's a case where the child is not in danger, but these cases are then getting dragged out for years, so that initial bond between the parent and child is just being stretched and stretched. So by the time the kid gets back to the family, it's no longer as strong as it was. And they have a sense of confusion then as well, because they've been so long with the foster family. So they're confused about who they want to be with, where their position is at the minute.
Yeah, it's a very difficult one, because I've seen children being taken into care and also supported this to happen sometimes, because mum and dad are just not able, and it's not fair on the children. But if someone had stepped in a year previous, it wouldn't have had to happen, is what Bridget is saying. There needs to be a lot more supports within the community, especially a disadvantaged community. They need to be able to come for supports and not feel judged and fear. And I think the beauty of Exchange House Ireland is they can come without judgment and fear, but they also know as well that we have to report things to Tusla if we see things unfit. So that is another barrier sometimes. But when we sit down and explain it in a gentle way, and this is what it means, and this is, just in our own normal language, without having to use all these words. Not everybody has been to third level education, especially travellers. And for someone to come out and use even just words that are not even as big to us might be huge to one of those parents that are illiterate and not understanding what they're saying to you. And it's very scary to be in a position where you don't understand what the other person is saying. It's like going to the doctors and they're talking to you in doctor words and you're freaking out because you think now you're dying. That's what it feels like to them moms, and that is it. They don't understand what's happening and it's not explained to them properly. Whereas they come then with their letters that they've gotten or whatever, and they'll come in and talk to one of our social workers and they break it down to them in a normal, caring way. I think that's what they need to learn how to do that.
And to take that fear away. Like a lot of families are so afraid of looking for help in fear of their kids being taken away from them, that they're not seeking the help that they need at the time. So then the situation gets so severe where it can no longer be hidden and other people then are seeing the problem. So it's been left too long. It's been left to fester, and then it becomes a dangerous situation.
Yeah, that's a terrible bind to be in. What keeps you going?
Seeing the results that we're getting from these families, I think.
Yeah.
Because we'd often have our own conversation, and we'd say like, oh, didn't they do really well today? And, we can see the improvement on some of the kids. And
for me, I expect good results from us, and we do get good results, not to be tooting our own horns here or anything, but for me, it's coming up against somebody that I feel is discriminating, and that I know in my heart that they are. They're not saying it out loud, but I know it to be true. And breaking that barrier down to make it in a way where they're open to conversation, and where they're opening, they're kind of reflecting on their own biases. And for me, that's what keeps me going, because the more that we're able to do that, more open Ireland will become. And I think that's the only way. For me, that's my kick, is being able to break down stigma and being able to break down discrimination one person at a time.
Yes.
Plus with us working with TUSLA as well, they might see the benefits of having maybe more traveller access support workers and incorporate that around Ireland maybe. So it's also opening up
all over.
Job opportunities for travellers as well.
Elizabeth, you mentioned your mum. Would you like to say who she is?
Oh, my mother is Chrissie Donoghue Ward. She's a poet. She's a lifelong activist. Her sister was Nan Joyce. They were the first human rights activists alongside their uncles and cousins to stand up for travellers' rights within Ireland. They came from the north to the south, and they came in the time of the Troubles. And when they got here, they realised actually the south was scarier than the north because of the discrimination and people living in kind of third world situations when that we're fairly we're not that poor a country where people are living in muck and not having facilities, toilet, bin service. So my aunt ran for election, obviously with discrimination at that time. She didn't get a seat, but she changed. She taught people that you can, just because you don't get to where you need to go, you need to stand up for yourself. And if something is not right, stand up for the person beside you. If they can stand up for them. And so I think her and my mother were very big advocates of standing up for the person next to you if they can't stand up for themselves. So it is a calling on them. And my mother is a writer, so she wrote a lot of poems. But my mother was also illiterate. She couldn't read or write. So she taught herself through looking at us doing her homework. So it would be very small, baby writing, and we would interpret that then into her poem. Or sometimes we had 8 girls in the family, and I didn't like to clean and I didn't like to cook. Still don't. And so my job, she would call me or there was another sister there. The rest of them pretended they couldn't understand because they didn't want to write the words down, but I felt it was better for me. I enjoyed that more than out cooking and cleaning. So that was my job, was to kind of write down what she's saying. So she did get a recorder, and she has amazing poetry, and she has created the Fairy Queen for children, not only traveller children but for settled children to learn about traveller culture in a not so scary way, and for traveller children to see a book on the shelves about them. and it's fantasy and it's culture and it's not on the nose. It's a great little book.
Yeah, it sounds amazing. We'll have a link to it on our webpage for this podcast so people can get it. And I might ask you to read or recite something from her if you want to. But before we do that, as we're coming towards the end of this chat, is there anything else you'd like to say that or anything you want to add that you haven't had a chance to yet?
Yeah, I'm just going to say that I read this book. I borrowed it off Elizabeth. It was the first I had heard about the book when I started working in Exchange House and working alongside Elizabeth. So I had borrowed it and I actually brought it home and read it to my 8-year-old. You know, she loved it. She loved the stories and she loved the pictures, and she asked me actually was there another one that she could get to bring home.
Yeah.
So I'm waiting on the second book.
She has about 20 of them written. It's just getting some of the published.
So how do you feel about closing with something
I'll read,
from her if you'd like?
Yeah, I'll read a poem that she wrote about me. And this is a poem that I would share with a lot of children to kind of get them to see that I know what they feel. And you shouldn't have to face all this so young. Like people are afraid that send their children off to school. What we're afraid of is them losing their self in school.
Yeah.
So it's really, really difficult. Now, do you want to add anything else, Bridget, before?
No, I hope we covered everything that you wanted to know, Niamh, and
hope we didn't
confuse you more. Yeah,
not at all. No, it was a brilliant conversation and very, very eye-opening, and I just hope we can have more of them. Thank you.
No problem. So, Musha Mommy, don't send me to school. Musha Mommy, they treat me like a fool. They stand around and call me names. In this class, I'm not the same. Leave me at home where I belong, not with these silly buffers, they're not my clan. Leave me a home where I belong. I'll wash the dishes, I'll clean the floor, I'll mind the babies and a whole lot more. In this horrible school, they call me names. In their hearts, I'm not the same. I'm only one amongst 29. They're not my kind. Please let me home. In their heart, I'm not the same. I'm only one girl among 29. So that's kind of to let them know.
Thank you. Thanks, Elizabeth. Thanks, Bridget. Really appreciate you coming in.
No problem.
That was a really illuminating conversation with Elizabeth and Bridget. I'm very grateful to them and everybody at Exchange House Ireland for the work they're doing. The book that Elizabeth referenced, The Fairy Queen by Chrissie Donoghue Ward, is available from bookshops nationwide and online. Thanks for listening to Stories from Foster Care. I'm Niamh Barrett. Till next time, take care.